This afternoon, government is justifying the decision to move Minister of State in charge of national security Bryan Acheampong to the Interior Ministry. The presidency has also clarified that in his new role, Bryan Acheampong will report both to the Interior Minister Ambrose Derry and also carry out tasks assigned him by President Akufo-Addo. Communication Director at the Jubilee House, Eugene Ahen, has been breaking this down to my colleague Emefa Apao. But first, here is a statement which came through this morning. It says President Akufo-Addo reassigns 2 ministers. One, the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has reassigned the following ministers. It says Honorable Bryan Acheampong, MP, Minister of State at the Ministry of National Security, is now Minister of State at the Ministry of Interior. Honorable Henry Quartey, Member of Parliament, who is also Deputy Minister for Interior, is now Deputy Minister at the Ministry of National Security, and is signed by Eugene Ahen. Well, what we know is that the specific roles of the National Security Minister, Albert Kandapa, and then Minister of State at the Ministry of National Security was of concern to the Emil Short Commission that probed the violence that marred a by-election. Here is lawyer for the commission back then.
There is a Minister of State in charge of national security. Is there an overlap between your duties?
The Minister of State for National Security is, if you like, my deputy.
Very well. Honorable, if you may explain further what you mean by the Minister of State in charge of security being your deputy. Does it mean he takes direct instructions from you, being the minister?
He is supposed to take instructions from me, but not on everything that he does. I mean, similarly, I do have a national security coordinator who is supposed to take instructions from me, but he doesn't wait for my specific approval before he undertakes any activity. He will later tell me about what he has done, and for my information, yes.
So from this answer you've just given, does it mean that you will be ultimately responsible for the actions and inactions of the Minister of State in charge of national security?
To the extent that he was carrying out the legitimate duties of the ministry.
That was lawyer for the commission and the National Security Minister, Albert Kandapa, back then. Well, Eugene Ahen explains further, and he also refutes assertion that there were frictions between the National Security Minister, Albert Kandapa, and Bryan Acheampong, who was, according to the minister, supposed to take instructions from him. Listen to Eugene Ahen speak to MFR Pao earlier on the Midday News on radio.
Nothing specifically has triggered these changes. I mean, the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, believes at this point in time he would prefer the services of Honorable Bryan Acheampong at the Ministry of Interior, and then the former Deputy Minister for Interior, Henry Quartey, he would prefer him to go work at the Ministry of National Security as a Deputy Minister. So, at least in the President's view, he believes at this point in time the service of the two gentlemen will be required at these particular ministries.
So we know that Mr. Henry Quartey was a Deputy Minister of Interior. Mr. Bryan Acheampong is going there, staying as a Minister of State at the Ministry of Interior. What exactly will be his role?
Ordinarily, a Minister of State at any particular ministry ordinarily is assigned a specific role, either by the President or either by the minister for that particular sector to undertake. So from my understanding, I know it's with respect to a specific role that he would be undertaking at that particular ministry. As to the nature of that specific role, I'm unable to put out that particular information as it is now. But I mean, this is not the first time in the history of our country that a Minister of State, for example, has been deployed to the ministry. The then President of the Republic, His Excellency JoyNews, appointed an Obi-Wan to that particular ministry as Minister of State. So this is not the first time. Indeed, Mr. Bryan Acheampong, for example, until his reassignment, was a Minister of State at the Ministry of National Security. So these movements are normal occurrences in our body politic.
So will the Interior Ministry, for instance, get a deputy minister? Because the understanding is that Bryan Acheampong will not be the deputy minister at the Ministry of Interior.
Things stand now. No, the Ministry of Interior would not be assigned a deputy minister as things stand now. No.
Eugene Ahin is Director of Communications at the Jubilee House, explaining the move that government has made today earlier to MFA Apau on the Midday News.